what is worship?
So your life is a life of representing God.
In that essence, is that a whole what is called true worship is dipped into that?
How do you worship God in spirit and in truth?
Can you help me out to understand what it means to worship God in spirit and in truth?
Those are just elements of worship, components of what. Those are expressions of worship.
Some are still in that path of walking to say worship is music, is dancing, is them lifting hands, and all sort of things.
The chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever.
Is the worship nowadays in how you see things colored in a way that glorifies God?
The audience of worship becomes ourselves, not God. You are adding to humanity, you are adding to the goodness of man. You're not conflicting His word.
They have distorted it.
Like Abel, the stubbornness, the arrogance. Use your gifts and talents and abilities that God has given you to the best of your ability. Represent God. The problem is, the world is going to be judged by
Christ. I'll step down. As I always say, if all this is our own doing, then it's worth nothing, because it's only through Jesus and Him alone all things work together. Welcome to the Cubicle with me, Peter K. And today I'm with a great man, Pastor David Chibanga. Sir, you're welcome.
Thank you.
I remember the first time when you were teaching the class and I said, sir, I want to have a conversation with you when I talk about worship, and you are willing. On that, I need to appreciate for coming, for sparing your time.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much.
So before we driving into our conversation, can you tell me just a brief summary of who is Mr. Reverend David?
Well, I am David Chibanga, and I studied theology from the Baptist Theological Seminary of Zambia. I had my first Bachelor of Theology, and I did my Master's of Religious Education from Houston Wale, it's a Reformed Theological Institute in Zambia. So basically, that is where my theological journey, as it is, where it was solidified, and the collection of all the professors that have invested their time and taught me. A collection of all those that came in my life, and have shaped my theological path and my thinking, and I need to share those to the people that are coming after me.
Wow, nice. So let's now drive into our topic today, theology of worship. So let's start with, I may ask the question, what is worship?
Yeah. Usually I ask, worship is a very simple term. Worship, well, they usually say it comes from an old English word. Worship, it's cut into two things, the worthness and the ship. So it's the value that we add. Worship is the value that we add to something. What is the value? So when something is valuable to you,
Yes.
so how much value you hold to that thing will determine how much you're going to keep it, will determine how much you're going to protect it, because of how much value that you've put on the object.
Yes.
Yeah. And in this sense, we are saying worship is attributed to a divine being, and in Christianity, we attribute worship to God. And so we are saying the value or the worth of God is what we ascribe. We ascribe worship. We ascribe the worthiness of God. Is He worthy of our praise and honor? So we worship God for who He is.
Okay.
We praise Him for what He has done. So worship is attributed to a divine being, and in this sense, we attribute worship to God.
Wow. Okay. From what you are saying, then let me also ask another question. You have explained that we attribute our honor to God. In that essence, is that a whole what is called true worship is dipped into that?
Well, true worship. Usually, I just take the exposition of true worship from the biblical exposition of true worship is given by Jesus Christ is coming down, passing through Samaria. He's at the well and meets a woman, a Samaritan woman, and they're arguing who worships God
Yes.
because they worship in Samaria and in Jerusalem. And then Jesus is asking her. I mean, they wanted some water to drink,
To drink.
and Jesus, in response to that, he says, "True worshippers will worship God in truth and in
In
spirit."
spirit.
Yeah, true worshippers are gonna come neither in Jerusalem nor on the mountain here, but true worshippers will worship in spirit and
In
in
truth.
truth. Because God is spirit. So there you have Jesus Himself is defining worshippers, and that's what God is seeking for. God seeks for true worshippers and those who worship God in truth and in spirit. Now, the problem is now exposing or qualifying what it means to worship God in spirit
Yeah.
and in truth. That where now the trouble is. How do you worship God in spirit and in truth? And that's where you find a lot of people going around circles trying to define worshiping God in truth and in spirit.
So I'm just building on from what you are saying, then it's triggering a lot of questions.
Well,
So
good.
can you help me out to understand what it means to worship God in spirit and in truth? Yeah, the
Well,
big idea behind that.
yeah, the big idea is worshiping God in truth and in spirit. Well, Paul explains it very casually. He explained this in the letters he's written to Galatians and also Ephesians, Colossians to say. He's explaining to worship God in spirit as is given what it means to be in spirit. Usually, being in spirit brings or springs as a result of who a person who is in spirit is. And Galatians chapter 5, verse 22, we know that when a person is in spirit, we understand that the fruit or the results of being the spirit is the qualities of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, temperance, self-control. It says, against such there is no law. So if that person has those qualities, then that shows the fruit of the spirit. And so it resounds in itself into true
Worship.
worship. And if you have those qualities, then just your life itself will reflect as it. If you have love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, so your life is a life of representing God. It's a life of worship because you're representing God in all the instant. That's a fruit
Yes.
of that's a fruit of a person who's in spirit.
Okay.
And it's very important for us to note that because usually there's certain things that we look at, especially in scripture, that guides us in many ways to look at how it looks, how it sounds to um, to be in the spirit.
Okay.
And there is in Paul's letter that he writes to the he writes to the Ephesians when he's explaining walking in the newness of life, walking in the newness of life. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 17, it says, "Now this I say and testify in the Lord that you must no longer walk as the Gentiles do in the futility of their minds. They are darkened in their understanding, alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them due to their hardness of heart. They've become callous and have given themselves to sensuality, greedy practice, every kind of impurity, but that is not the way you learned Christ, assuming that you have heard about him and were taught in him, as the truth is in Jesus. So there we find that you can only find the truth in Jesus. First of all, walking in the Spirit and truth, you cannot walk in the Spirit and truth without Christ.
Christ
Because Christ is the way, the truth,
and
and
the
the life.
life.
You cannot worship God without Christ. And so the truth is in Christ. And the problem is the world is going to be judged by what they've done in holding unrighteousness, holding righteousness in unrighteous manner. Because that which can be known of God is manifest in that the visible attributes that we see and feel and touch, that we can see from the senses. You can see the world, you can see everything. The thing that you can see actually reveal the glory of God,
Yeah.
magnificence of the glory of God. When you just look at the thing, you say, there must be somebody who put those things in place, because they're not there by accident or coincidence. They are there by somebody who put them there. And so that's somebody who put the order to all this beauty and to all these things that we see in the general revelation, because God reveals himself in the things that we see. Then we'll be able to glorify him as God, because we are enjoying those things that he has actually made. When we look at them, the stars, the moon, the stars, and everything, the cosmos and the earth and everything that he has created. So
That's the whole.
they are the visible attributes
That
to
is all.
show that.
Okay, so from my explanation, here comes another question to say, uh, there are people out there who have viewed worship and they're still viewing it, not who have viewed, mean when I say they are who have viewed, meaning to say they have now come to realization, but some are still in that path of walking to say worship is music, is dancing, is them lifting hands and all sort of things. How how is that different, or how can you explain that?
Worship is just those are just elements of worship, components of what those are expressions of worship. We express worship in music and dance. We express worship in song. We express worship in prayer. We express worship in kneeling down and standing up. We express worship in all these physical things that we do. But worship is more than that.
Well,
Worship is more than music. Worship is more than prayer. Worship is more than preaching. Worship is having the right opinion of God in everything we do and say. So we worship God not only on Sunday when you go to church in that 3 hours, the beginning from end. Yes, we call it worship service from the prayer to benediction. Everything containing therein is worship, but worship is actually a way of life. Worship is we worship God in how we look at nature. We worship God when we're at home. We worship God in the things that he has given us to be stewards. We represent God. We're created in his image and after his likeness. So worship is the reason why we're created. We're created to honor and worship
God.
God. So in what we do, in all the faculties of our mind, that's supposed to bring glory and honor
To God.
to God. Because that's the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever.
Forever.
I mean, 17th century theologians who coined the Westminster Confession of Faith, the Logical Catechism, all those things, they were not wrong to say that the chief end of man is to worship God and enjoy him forever. Solomon also attributes that when he writes is Ecclesiastes. The end of it says he has seen everything, vanity of vanities. But what does it say in Ecclesiastes 12, the last part of Ecclesiastes? It says, what is the chief end of man? What can we say about all these things? It says, fear God and keep his commandments. For this is the whole duty of man.
Oh,
Fear God and keep his commandments. So how do you keep his commandments without worshiping him. How do you do that? Huh? How do you do that? So this is what it says. This is all the duty of a man. The end of the matter in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13. The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God. That's the word fear there is coming from the word reverent. So worship is reverent. To
It's not
revere God.
it's not the fear of
Yes. No, it's not
maybe
the fear like you're scared. No,
trembling.
no, it's the having the correct opinion of God.
Okay.
You're having the right opinion of God. Fear God and keep his commandments. For this is the whole duty of man. So the whole duty of man is basically to reverence him, to worship him, to honor him and enjoy him forever. That's the whole duty of man.
Wow. So, as you have said, the chief end of man is
That's the
to the
purpose. That's
purpose
the purpose of man.
to glorify God and
Fear him,
enjoy
yes,
Him
enjoy forever, yes.
forever. So, from your explanation, you have answered many things, touched many parts. So, from your own seeing of things, how how can you view is the worship nowadays and how you see things carried in a way that glorifies God?
Well, basically, it lack of understanding. I put it simply: worship is in the three pillars that define true worship. First of all, it's the object of worship,
Yes.
the worship itself, and the subject of worship. The subject of worship are human beings. Now, then worship itself is the middle as a subject, the middle between the subjects who are human being and the object who is God. So worship in between, we have Jesus, who's 100% man and 100% God, who can hold God and hold man together. And worship is a meeting of the supernatural and the natural. So you cannot explain something that is supernatural using natural means because I usually give an example of a 33 kV electricity that goes, and then you have, down over here. You need to step down
Yes.
because if you don't step down, you're going to bend all your equipment and
For
home. You're
sure.
going to bend. So we cannot see God because it's so holy.
Yes.
And so Jesus is the one now steps down. He satisfies the need of a holy God to come and hold us and to hold God. He has satisfied the need in his atoning sacrifice because no one can see God without the shedding of blood. And so he came and shed blood and that is because we're sinners, because we're sinners from the beginning. So he shed blood so that we can have fellowship again that was lost between God and ourselves. And in worship, Jesus becomes the center. We are celebrating his death, his his death, his burial, and resurrection.
Resurrection.
His death, burial, and resurrection plays a pivotal role in that he died in our state and buried and resurrected. And so we are walking in the newness of life by celebrating the redemptive work of Christ for atoning us that we now have access to God in worship through Jesus Christ, which we could not have gone to God by ourselves.
Ourselves.
We cannot go because number one, we are fallen. And because of that fallenness, we draw our worship from tradition, from experience, and we draw our worship from
Reasoning.
reasoning.
Yeah.
So our reasoning is warped, so is our tradition, and so is our experience.
Yes.
And so the only way you can come to God is through his regulative principle. It's him who puts the terms, not us putting the
Us.
terms, because we're the ones who offended him. So he's the one who has put that regulative principle. You cannot. He made the first move by bringing his son and not us because we couldn't go to God the way we are unless he himself made that way to meet him. And that the love of God is manifested in the death of Christ. And then if you can't see that, then you're blinded for good.
So, if in your explanation, you say we worship God in God's terms.
Yes, On God's terms, yes.
Not our own terms.
Not our own terms.
So if one want to worship God in his own terms, meaning he's saying he's missing it.
You're missing it. You miss it like Abel. The stubbornness, the arrogance, the comes from I want I want to come to you on my own terms. You can't do that because you don't. Number one, you're not equal with God.
Yes.
He's the owner of everything. So you cannot put the terms. He's the owner of everything, including your life, your intelligence, your ability, everything you boast about were given to you by God. So you cannot go to you don't have means to compete with him by any means. So you cannot you cannot everything that you can come up with cannot satisfy God unless on his own terms. You cannot come to God.
Okay, so we're going to an end of the of this, but still more questions are coming. So, what can be your word to those people who understand worship, but they have distorted it?
Well, it's because we tend worship. Yeah, most of the time the church has gone off tangents because the audience of worship becomes ourselves, not God. It becomes a form of entertainment. We want to entertain ourselves. When we feel good, then we think we're worshiping. No, it's not us. The audience is God. So worship is not pointing. Our worship is pointing to God.
Yes.
The worthiness is all going to God, not to ourselves.
Yes.
So we choose how to worship God in our denominations. I want to worship God like this. I want to come to God like this. So we make our own preferences. We choose, we pick the cherries, how to come to God. But no, we need to come to God on his terms. Not on our terms. But because we fallen, so we want to come to God in our own ways. And remember, we are like Cain. So and when God rejects us, we become jealous and we want to start pointing at another
Others.
person, Abel, and somebody wants to murder somebody who's accepted. So we need to come to God on his terms, not on our terms. On his terms. What are God's terms to come to him, not on our terms? So that is a problem we have. The problem we have is that we want to come to God. Listen, people want to go to God in some use mystic ways, you know. They want to hear the bells. They want to, look at the incense. They want to, in awe and wonder, they want to come to God and the things that draws them, to God. But God is plain. He has given us how he wants us to worship, to honor him. He's given us plain in his word.
Wow.
Yeah,
So, what can be your word to the people who have now getting the idea of worship, and when there was a time where they did not get it, now they have the right idea? What would be your word to them?
Well, if you've got the correct idea, continue in that idea. Worship is a lifestyle. It's an everyday. Use your gifts and talents and abilities that God has given you to the best of your ability. Represent God. Represent God as a doctor. You can represent God as a doctor, not being corrupt, not being, by self-ambition. So you can serve God in whatever capacity that God has enabled you. Whatever area that God has enabled you to worship him. He has given you that vocation, that ability, that gift. You can worship God using that means, and you can represent him. As long as you're not conflicting, you're adding to humanity, you are adding to the goodness of man, you're not conflicting his word. So God has actually opened that avenue for you to worship him in that, to worship God. You can serve God in various areas. You can honor him by being truthful and doing that thing, loving God and loving. How can you say you love God and you don't love the person you're seeing? So that's how you worship. You worship him by honoring his image, likeness. What does he want you to be? How does he want you to treat another human being? So your ideologies should circle around honoring God on this earth. He's created us in His image and after His likeness. So any other ideology that demean, demeaning, demeans or insults, the image of God is to be, considered not true. So every human being who is created in the image of God uh, needs to know, and they need to be directed to true worship. True worship is, centering on the object of worship, who is God, and you
God,
can not worship God first of all without Christ.
Christ, step down, as you have said.
Yeah, you cannot worship God without Christ, and you can only worship in spirit as revealed by the special revelation, which is the Word of God. And also the general revelation, He has revealed Himself in creation. And all the things that I'm telling you, I learned from special revelation from His Word.
Oh.
So that's why I learned those from. And then we are bringing them into reality, bringing them, because Christianity is a relationship, is not a religion, a relationship. How, first of all, it's a vertical relationship with God and horizontal relationship with one another. And Jesus says, the whole law and the prophets hang on two commandments. You shall love the Lord with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul. So love your neighbor as yourself. And so these two hang the whole law and the prophets. So the trouble we have is I'm looking at you in different lenses, and I'm also segregating and doing all that thing, but then I need to look at you the way you are. And then I'm also have to look at God and glorify God in this way. And so if only we understood these concepts, if only we understood how God created us, I think the earth would be a better place. And everybody, of all the wars, the conflicts, and all these things, rage and everything, cannot be, you know, cannot be prevalent if you understand those concepts.
So, thanks for taking your time to explain what worship is, true worship, and the whole idea behind it.
Yeah.
I really appreciate for your comment.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much, and I'm so grateful. And it's good to just see you that you're trying to learn more and
For sure.
getting more about worship.
And for our viewers, that was what true worship is all about. And I was here with Pastor David Chibanga. Until next time, goodbye.